Good morning and a very warm welcome, everybody, to the virtual final event of the ROSIE project. My name is Antoni Muschalek. I have the pleasure to moderate this event. ROSIE, Responsible and Innovative SMEs in Central Europe. There are 3 years of innovation and knowledge development. There are 3 years of many activities, uncountable workshops and lessons learned, and much experience. Today, we will wrap up these 3 years of ROSIE with this virtual event. There are about 75 participants attending from all over Europe. Within the next 3 hours, we will have a mixture of live presentations and video clips from all ROSIE local partners. And you will have 1 hour time in national session rooms for sharing experiences and lessons learned. But before we will start, I still want to give you some user instructions to the hop-in platform. As you can see, there are 3 different areas within the tool. First, there's the stage. That's where we are right now. Second, you've got the session area. There, the sessions will take place later on. Then you have this reception area where you can always see what's going on at the moment. In each area, you have a chat on the right-hand side. There you can interact with us. You can drop questions or leave a message or whatever you want. You can hide the chat and you can show it again by clicking the small arrow in the upper right corner. Additionally, there is a networking area. There you can get to know other participants one-to-one. That works during the breaks, works during breaks or after the event. If you have any questions concerning the tool, please use the event chat for asking. But now, let's start with our program. In a few moments, we will listen to the greeting words of Michael Paduch, CEO of Bautzen Innovation Center and the responsible project partner for this event. Afterwards, we will have a video presentation by Mr. Jonathan Hankins, responsible research and innovation expert and co-editor of the International Handbook of Responsible Innovation. He will open the plenary meeting with his lecture in What does responsible innovation look like in a business context? But first, I hand over the word now to Mr. Paduch for his welcome words via video.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear lead partner, dear project partners. The ROSIE project is coming to an end, and we want to look back on the last 3 project years in today's online conference. Originally, we wanted to meet with you in the beautiful civic hall of the city of Zittau. Due to the corona pandemic, however, we had to switch to this online version. This probably fits much better with the ROSIE project, which deals with the topic responsible innovation. I think you know what I'm getting at, because we all have a responsibility to future generations. This event format is exemplary, as this saves many tons of CO2, as you can easily attend the event from home or from your office. This example too shows that many new ways are already possible today, and we just have to be ready to break the old patterns. First of all, however, we must fulfill an important precondition for this, which means that we must develop a greater awareness of responsibility. It's not always easy. The small and medium-sized enterprises in our regions have a hard fight every day and must remain competitive in a business world where everything is moving faster and faster. Innovate or die. Yes, this slogan is the driving force. But what about innovate responsibly? What does that mean? What's the point? And finally, why me? We two project partners in the ROSIE project asked ourselves these questions. How do we convey the message of responsible innovation to companies in our different regions? How can we motivate them? What tools do we need for this? I think I can't anticipate that much. We've found answers. Admittedly, it was not easy to find the right approach, and it quickly became clear to us that we need different ones. But I think we will certainly learn more about this from our speakers, Julia and Jonathan, in the plenary session. And then, of course, in the national breakout rooms. Before we get involved in content, I'd like to show you what you all missed on this day, namely visiting our beautiful region, Upper Lusatia, in German Oberlausitz. The word Lusatia has a Slavic origin, which is still very alive here today. On the one hand, we live in a bordered triangle with short distances to our Polish and Czech friends. On the other hand, Lusatia is the home of the Serbian people who still maintain their language and culture and shapes our region. Please allow me to take you on a short trip to Upper Lusatia. Sit back and enjoy it. I hope this has whetted your appetite for more, and we look forward to welcoming you as guests soon. Because here in Upper Lusatia and throughout Saxony, you will not only find fantastic landscapes and cultural places, but also many interesting companies. This is also the case in Bautzen, the city from which I speak to you today, and where the TGZ, a business incubator and a technology transfer point, is located. In Saxony, a significant number of small and medium-sized enterprises are increasingly open to cooperation. They have realized that cooperation and networking are essential to achieve synergy and to counterbalance the disadvantages of their smaller size compared to larger West German competitors. In order to overcome the principal weaknesses of small and medium-sized companies, in the face of the challenges of a global economy, it will be necessary to strengthen the access to new technologies and new skills. I think that the ability to implement responsible innovations is definitely one of them. The task of the DGZ Business Incubator is to accompany the enterprises on their way and to bring new impulses to the region. This is where programs such as Interreg Central Europe come into play, and I cannot emphasize their importance enough. They are a great opportunity for a wide range of players, be it companies, business development agencies, cultural institutions, or even citizens, to come into contact with new topics and developments, and above all, to enter into an exchange with each other. That is why today I would also like to thank all those who contribute to living the European idea of cooperation through the Interreg programs. Let us now move on to our event today. Johnny Hankins, a proven expert in the field of responsible innovation, will explain what responsible innovation means in a business context. Johnny is co-editor of the International Handbook on Responsible Innovation. Giulia Bubolini will then briefly introduce the ROSIE project. Giulia is the project manager and works for special agency of the Chamber of Commerce of Forlì-Cesena in Italy. Afterwards, Markus Will from the University of Applied Sciences, Zittau-Görlitz, will present the results of a Central European Business Survey on responsible innovation. Markus works part-time as a sustainability consultant. Then we'll leave the plenum and go to the national breakout rooms. The project partners from the Central Europe regions will then present their local project results to you. For a while, we'll leave the English language area and go into our national languages. Companies that participated in the pilot action will also have their say there. There will be the possibility to pose questions to your original contact person. One room will also be reserved for the entire project. Here you can also inform yourself of the results in other regions. Last but not least, we all come together again in the plenary session, and the first Hungarian Responsible Innovation Agency will give a summary of the project. I hope you will enjoy listening and exchanging experiences. I would like to take this opportunity to once again expressly thank the project partners and the lead partner for the great cooperation over the last 3 years. I wish you all an interesting conference, and now hand over the floor to Johnny Hankins. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great privilege and a pleasure to have been invited to open the plenary session at this final ROSIE meeting. And I'd like to thank and congratulate everyone involved. In the video that's about to follow, I take a light-hearted look at responsible innovation from a business perspective. The responsible innovation concept is new. It's mainly been developed and promoted in policy-making and academic circles, the European Commission and universities, for example. And this is reflected in the language used to describe it. Some of the concepts that underpin the policy approaches are not so well known in business circles, as they relate to governance. Some of those developed in academic circles may seem abstract and difficult to apply. They're more philosophical than economic. The problem is that responsible innovation is not something fixed that can be described, measured, and prescribed. It's not concrete, but an idea, an underlying goal. Nobody is qualified to tell you how to do it, or even really what it actually is in any particular case. In your case, for example. You can aim for it, but you have to picture your own goal. In some ways, it can be seen as a mix of different approaches and goals. In the video, I use a circus metaphor. How might a business feel while trying to implement an approach that cannot be tightly defined and is difficult to describe and to explain and to justify, even once it's been interpreted, understood, and accepted as a just choice? It's a balancing act, in public and in the dark. Roll up, roll up, roll up to the greatest show on earth. The circus of responsible innovation pulls into town, and what a treat it is. Today, I am here to reveal its secrets to you all, an incredible acrobatic feat of balance that will amaze young and old. What you are about to witness, ladies and gentlemen, is an incredible feat of tightrope walking, a multi-sided balancing trick that will enhance your business and your work experiences, although it may take some organising and thought about how to put it into practice. You will see our performers defy death as they navigate between European Commission norms, industrial standards, the need to make a profit and justify expenses, all while evaluating ethical and practical decision-making practices throughout the performance. This incredible feat will involve juggling two types of business responsibility. One, company-level responsibility, general organisational behaviour, and two, innovation-level responsibility, specific to each innovative development. This will require the acrobat, ladies and gentlemen, while walking a tightrope between the precautionary principle and the innovation principle, to keep at least 7, yes, ladies and gentlemen, 7 balls in the air at the same time. 1, accountability for impacts on society, the environment, and the economy. Transparency in decision-making, ethical behaviour, respect for stakeholders' interest, respect for the rule of law, following international norms of behaviour, and respect for human and workers' rights. And with 7 balls in the air, you will see our incredible performers walk this tightrope while simultaneously balancing the European Commission's own promoted principle of proportionality and adaptation. Incredible, yes, but here for you all to see and experience. On the left, the acrobat faces the precautionary principle, enshrined in the Treaty of Rome with its 3 preliminary conditions to address. identification of potentially adverse effects, evaluation of the scientific data available, the extent of scientific uncertainty. And then, ladies and gentlemen, with these three conditions met, the acrobat will attempt to prove the absence of danger. Yes, the absence of danger before even proceeding. She will demonstrate that the company's approach has been thought through, informed, and action taken to mitigate risks, both seen and unseen risks. If the acrobat leans too far in this direction, however, the precautionary direction, she will fail the innovation principle. Innovation, an economic driver as well as a vehicle for addressing societal needs, necessary and promoted by the European Union. And we must remember, ladies and gentlemen, there can be no responsible innovation without innovation. So, ladies and gentlemen, balance will be required between the precautionary principle and the innovation principle, and between the benefits and the risks of an innovation. The acrobat will need proportionality and adaptation if she is to stay balanced. Fine body control, precision, courage, and I hasten to add, a safety net, just in case of accidents. But ladies and gentlemen, that is not all you will see in the responsible innovation circus. Our acrobat will also act in a manner that is reasonable and fair, generate trust in governance and regulatory processes, act as early as possible, and of course, the biggie, be cost effective. Of course, the responsible innovation ringmaster will sustain you all while you are working towards this incredible achievement, telling the acrobat what is and is not required for different innovations at different stages, and how to document the outcomes of their responsible innovation approach in a way that meets stakeholder and societal expectations. After all, this is only building on practices that most businesses already follow. It is not rocket science. And what a gain will be made, ladies and gentlemen. Stakeholders will be engaged, information and ideas shared that will lead to product improvement. Companies will learn more about how they can provide the services their customers and potential customers want. The best workers will want to work for companies that can walk the line. There might be reduced costs, reputational gains, better employee retention, faster market entry, access to previously unavailable stakeholders, higher quality end products, and greater innovation potential through diversity in employees. And it will be beautiful to see and to do. Trade associations and chambers of commerce will all play their role, facilitators and game changers, mediators and amalgamators, all from a few simple questions about possible benefits from innovation and a few about risks. First, questions about benefits. What are the goals, purposes, and intended applications of your innovation? How will you monitor if it meets them? Who or what might benefit from your innovation? How likely and how significant are these benefits? How can this be assessed? How are the benefits obtained? Can they be demonstrated, and might they change over time? And now, ladies and gentlemen, to complete the feat, a few simple questions about potential risks of an innovation. What are the risks of all foreseeable uses of your innovation, including accidental or malicious misuse? Do you have a process to classify and assess these potential risks? Who or what might be at risk? How likely is it and how significant? Do you have a risk management plan? How do you communicate the possible risks or perceived risks to potentially affected parties? Can third parties or employees report potential vulnerabilities, risks or biases? And how will they be dealt with, both the risks and those who report them? Will you restrict who you work with and how to proceed because of risk? How are these decisions made and documented? And how well do you know and can you manage your system? So roll up. Not only is admission free, but you might even be able to get some money from the European Union to help in training. Just make sure to use a safety net. The British Standards Institute has just released a publicly available specification, PAS 440, Responsible Innovation. They've made it free of charge. This might be a good starting point when introducing practical approaches to business. The Institute also asked for feedback from those trialling their approach so that it can be improved. The publisher Springer have a short brief series on research and innovation governance, one of which is dedicated to responsible innovation. It's free to download. It contains several case studies in short, easy-to-read chapters. The Bassetti Foundation website offers guidance through the last 20 years of developments, as a celebration of this final virtual meeting, you can all download a free copy of my new book. Links will follow, so get your phone out. I was Jonathan Hankins of the Bassetti Foundation. Thanks for attending and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hankins, for this inspiring and so very entertaining video. We will have the opportunity to ask you some questions later on in the Q&A plenary session. Coming up next is a live presentation from Giulia Bubolini. She's the lead partner of Interreg Central Europe ROSIE, and she's head of EU and public funded projects at the Center of Innovation and Economic Development in Italy. So Giulia, please come up on stage. We are waiting for you. It might take some seconds until Giulia can enter the stage. We will see whether she is coming. By the way, if you have any questions during the lectures and the presentations, please write into the chat whatever you want to know from the lecturers. So now is Giulia coming. So we will welcome her on stage. Hello, Giulia. Nice to see you. So I will give the word to you now for your live presentation, Giulia. See you then afterwards again.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry, but of all days, today I had a connection problem like 5 seconds ago, as if it weren't already challenging enough to come on stage after Jonathan's unusual and brilliant presentation. However, I will try and also bring some elements of interest and novelty to this final event of our ROSIE project. Let me start with some numbers. ROSIE is a 3 years project involving 11 partners plus 5 associated partners from 8 Central European regions. With a budget of 1.8 million euros, more or less. In 2017, we started our common journey to bring responsible innovation towards SMEs in Central Europe. So far, we've been able to reach out to actually train, to be more precise, on the concepts of responsible innovation, 469 people. And when we expected only 390. And we've been transferring them some of the principles of responsible innovation, some of the definitions, but mainly we have tried to have a very practical approach to it, and we've been focusing a lot on Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. As part of this process of transferring knowledge or building capacity, as we called it in ROSIE, we have also submitted a survey to 300 enterprises in order to understand whether they felt they were already contributing to the Agenda 2030 SDGs, and where they felt that there were already elements of responsible innovation in their innovation processes. For instance, we asked them whether they had gender balance in innovation teams, or whether they were already engaging with external stakeholders. I will now go into further details on the survey, because Professor Markus Will give them to you in a short while. So after this initial transfer of knowledge, or basic capacity building, as we call it, we went further to work with a smaller number of SMEs in order to support them in actually implementing responsible innovation within their organization. And we selected about 50 SMEs for this task, and they were selected through local open calls. But let's take a step back and look at ROSIE for a more general perspective, so it becomes clear what its structure and its aims were. So ROSIE belongs to the Interreg family. Interreg programs are funded by the European Regional Structural Fund to improve capacity of public authorities and public bodies to pursue their institutional role of promoting a smarter, sustainable and inclusive Europe. Specifically, ROSIE is funded by Interreg Central Europe, which fosters European territorial cooperation to promote innovation, a low-carbon economy, maintenance and capitalization of our cultural and environmental assets, and also promotes more efficient transport solution and networks. Quite obviously, ROSIE aimed at improving innovation, and specifically innovation ecosystem and dynamics in Central Europe, hinging on and contributing to improving regional smart specialization strategies. We began our work together by assessing maturity of our local innovation ecosystems against responsible innovation keys and dimensions. Quite unsurprisingly, we found out that maturity was quite modest. There were, of course, differences between the different territories involved in this maturity mapping, because there were territories with debate on responsible innovation. I started a bit more earlier in time, and other territories where the concept was basically dawning, and that also thanks to Rosie. I was weird how those territories that were a bit more advanced in the local debate on RRI were also stricter in terms of assessing their maturity, and they had a tendency to evaluate themselves as very modest in terms of RRI maturity, whereas other territories that were just starting to talk about it were more somehow trusting of the readiness of the local ecosystem. So to better understand the diversity within the project, I should maybe tell you a little bit about who we are. So within the partnership, you find regions that span across all of Central Europe. So we have two leading Italian regions, Lombardy and Emilia-Romagna, with Innovap and Cheese and My organization representing them in the partnership. We have the first Hungarian Responsible Innovation Association from Szeged, Hungary, exactly. The Lublin Voivodeship in Poland. Then we have two partners from Croatia, the city of Šibenik and Inovacija from Zadar. We also have two partners from Slovenia, the city of Nova Gorica and the Slovenian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Also, we have the Regional Development Agency of Košice in the Slovak Republic and the Center for Social Studies in the Czech Republic. And last but not least, our host here today, our very special partner, TGZ from Bautzen, Germany. So, just like the maturity mapping, also the capacity building process that I mentioned before went in slightly different ways in the different regions. Some partner decided for classroom training, and some others were prepared on online resources. But both material from the classroom training and the online training resources are still available for those of you who might be interested to have a look or engage in the process of getting acquainted with responsible innovation. Do make sure you check them out on our toolbox, www.responsibleinnovationworkbox.eu. You will also find the survey there. Following the capacity building, some pilot actions were launched, as I said, and as I mentioned before, and also these pilot actions showed some local differences because they were tailor-made according to the local maturity, but also the local characteristics of the innovation ecosystem and the needs and interests that were showed by local enterprises. So, for instance, in Poland, but also in Lombardy, the process was a one-to-one support that took companies by the hand from getting acquainted to responsible innovation to actually implementing some elements of it, and eventually transferring responsible innovation principles in the company policies. Design thinking was a big thing throughout the partnership, and for instance, in Slovenia for sure, but also in Croatia with some hackathons exercises, and it was a big thing in Emilia-Romagna. There we tried to combine design thinking with some tools that are typical of responsible innovation, as the Ethic Canvas and the Prisma RI exemplar roadmaps. The first one to better design in the new products and services, and make sure that they take into account their long-term impact. And the second one, to better sketch, plan out the following steps of the innovation process towards the actual industrialization. But anyway, each company did receive some one-to-one support, although some of them may have been part of larger workshops. So I've been talking so much about differences throughout the partnership that I think that I now should spend a couple of seconds underlying what is so important about European territorial cooperation. So the local delivery, the local customization of the training and the assistance could not happen if there hadn't been a process of sharing knowledge, of reflecting together on available knowledge, and actually building some new knowledge as the discussion went on. It couldn't have happened if there hadn't been sharing of good practices and also peer-to-peer support among partners in order to understand how to better adapt and then implement lessons that we jointly learned in the local territories. The long-term result of ROSIE are the local roadmaps. These roadmaps describe territory by territory the lessons learned and how they will be transferred into tangible line of actions. Again, this line of actions can span from embedding responsible innovation in high-level policy making, as they're doing in Poland, for instance, to setting up one-to-one first-stop shop type of actions to make sure that company stakeholders that are interested in responsible research and innovation can get initial support. Responsible research and innovation has been a key element of Horizon 2020 Science with and for Society, with a lot of projects dealing with embedding RRI in regional smart specialization strategies, and a fewer projects dealing with bringing it in a business context. But we can proudly say that apart from Interreg Europe Marie, which is our sister project, ROSIE is the only European territorial cooperation project that has been committing to mainstream responsible research and innovation. So in a little way, we have been pioneers, as it often happens with pioneers. It's been quite some journey. And this is why I would like to thank you all for your attention, but I would like to give many, many thanks to our ROSIE partners for their commitments and their achievements. Thank you.
I'm on. Thank you, Julia, for these impressions of the ROSIE project. Again, we will have the opportunity to answer questions from the audience later on after the next presentation. So Julia will be back on stage in some minutes. But coming up next will be a lecture by Markus Will, Sustainability Consultant at the University of Applied Science Zittau-Görlitz. He will speak about the meaning of responsible research, innovation, and sustainability in SMEs, and the findings from the ROSIE project. So, Markus, please join me on stage now. Okay, here he is.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome on stage. I will leave, so yeah, that's your platform for the next minutes.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, warm words of welcome also from my side. Thank you for that nice introduction and for the both keynotes in front of me. I will focus on our study that was conducted during the project, and I will also say something about the meaning of sustainability and responsibility in terms of smaller, medium-sized enterprises. So for doing that, I prepared a PowerPoint presentation that I hope I will be able to show you in a minute. So I think there we go. I hope you can see it. I will start with, let's say, some general words about our study and then add some sort of reflection that is connecting to the things that have been said by Julia and especially also by our circus director, Johnny. Regarding that questionnaire or that survey, it was meant as sort of a self-assessment, also to, let's say, supplement the maturity mapping that was mentioned by Julia. So we had a couple of questions in an online questionnaire, and we invited a lot of companies to give us their opinions. So the research questions and implications are related to the impact of the products of the companies to the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. And a second battery of questions was focused on, let's say, on the capacity to deal with responsible innovation schemes. And in the end, we were talking about the consideration of RE within the product and service development phase. So having a look on the sample, you see that in the table and in the diagram. So there is the sample is dominated by companies from the service sector with above 50%, and the other major groups are from trade and tourism and from industry. That means manufacturing, food, mining, and utilities. If you have a look on the total sample. When we look into details of the different countries, we can see that the sample actually in each country except of Germany and Poland and that what we call others are dominated by very small companies. So that means companies with less than 10 employees. The next group is small companies with up to 50 employees with 47 on average, with 47 companies, and companies with more than 50 employees. That was like 40 companies in the sample. That makes up to 314 companies that are represented in our survey. Coming quickly to the first, let's say, results. This was on the impact of innovative products or services on the SDGs, and we compiled here the answers to our questionnaire. The question was, what kind of impact can have your innovative product or service on? And then we put the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Please note, we had an interval scale here from 0 to 10, and in order to present you the results in a comprehensive manner, we aggregated them into 3 categories. The red color means that there are even adverse effects assessed by the companies. Then the middle group is yellow, so there is particularly no impact. And the green ones is representing that companies see a positive impact on particular sustainable development goals. And as you can see from that figure, the beneficial, let's say, positive impacts or effects on the sustainability development goals are rather small, and if then we are focusing on Sustainable Development Goal 8, 3, and 9, this is decent work and economic growth, good health and well-being, and industry innovation and infrastructure, which is particularly that thing where the company is usually doing. So the benefits in general are rather small. The mean value is between 6 and 7 out of 10. So this is exactly at the edge of non-impact to a slight positive impact, let's say. And what was surprising, at least for me, is that we also see that companies see that their products or services have cause even adverse effects. So let's say negative impacts on the SDGs. So we see that if you have a look on the red colors for the particular sustainable development goals, let's say for SDG 7, 2, 16, 6, 15, and 14, there is about 20% of participants that answered that there are even negative impacts. Coming to some sort of ranking, there is the SDG 8, 3, and 9 in the front position, top 3. This is what I mentioned, and you can have a look on the distributions in the other countries. So actually, we don't see too much big differences here. So only selected SDGs are interesting for the companies. The next battery of questions was about the previous knowledge on responsible innovation. As Johnny told us, this is a rather new concept, which of course builds on things that are more common, like sustainability management or environmental management. But not surprising here is that the majority of companies in the sample stated that they don't have any previous knowledge on responsible innovation. So why it makes sense to start with that capacity building and pilot actions, as it was the goal of the ROSIE project. So main findings here: majority of companies on average have no previous knowledge on responsible research and innovation. But we see also that the concept is more known in Slovakia, Germany, and Italy, where the share of companies stating that they don't have previous knowledge is smaller, but still up to 30 to 40%. So the next figure we see here, the self-assessment related to the question: in managing your innovation process, does your organization use tools from the RI toolbox, for instance, or other tools in order to assess negative outcomes, potential negative outcomes of innovations? Again, we aggregated the interval scale that we had in the questionnaire to 3 categories. That is never, often, and always. So always is in green. This would mean that in every innovation process, tools are used to assess the outcomes and the effects on sustainability or on the common good by a structured process. The main finding here is that all the different aspects are considered. So we see the 6, let's say, major dimensions of responsible innovation as understood by the European Commission. So this is the reflection on ethics, the stakeholder engagement, the consideration of gender equality, a structured governance of innovation program, open access operations, and the promotion of science and education. So these are the 6, let's say, pillars from the European Commission, bringing their responsible innovation concept forward. And we see here now that all the different aspects are considered sometimes and sometimes often. And of least importance is the governance of innovation, open access, and the promotion of science and education, while we have a domination for reflection on ethics and also the stakeholder engagement and also gender equality. So here we see the international comparison. This is, let's say, more or less for your information. So of course we see differences in the countries participating in our survey, but I'm lacking a sort of cultural comparison theory that helps me to explain that differences. So please just take that for informative reasons. So obviously, we see that Czech Republic is, let's say, always, let's say, on the good side. So they are quite often in the front positions regarding the 6 pillars of responsible innovation. But again, as I said, it's usual or it's natural that we have differences in the countries. But I'm lacking, on the one hand, a cultural theory that tries to explain that. And also regarding our approach of sampling the data, we have also some limitations. So we cannot go over the, let's say, the description of the sample itself. So I will jump over this slide and come to that maybe in the discussion round. Some reflections on the limitations of the studies. We have, this is my personal opinion, let's say, we have, of course, some barriers in smaller enterprises towards sustainability management at all, and in responsible innovation in particular. The first thing is a small business is not a little big business. So this means that from my experience, smaller enterprises have to deal with different challenges compared to larger enterprises or the multinationals. I brought you this picture. This maybe helps to understand that. You have on the one axis the potential impact on responsibility or sustainable development goals, and we have the orientation or the strategy. And what I wanted to say is that, of course, the strategy and also the purpose of businesses might be different. So if we have a look on the capital market oriented bigger companies, the multinational operations, they might have a really big impact on sustainable development goals, especially because they are moving a lot of money and they are quite big, and so they have the, let's say, the slack to operate a sustainability department or something like that. And SMEs usually are limited in terms of that kind of resources. So we must say that the impact of smaller companies is, of course, lower. And then the question is, what is the purpose of that business? And we can go back to one famous quote from Milton Friedman, who allegedly said that the business of business is business, or let's say the business of business is to create benefit in terms of money, and that's it. But of course, nowadays the expectations regarding companies are much higher, and they also are confronted with some sort of supply chain pressure. So the bigger customers in the business of business to business B2B sector, they are requiring their SME suppliers to conduct like self-assessments or to provide data on the sustainability performance of their products. So I see that there is a change in the field and the responsible innovation, and also the ROSIE project may help to build up capacity for the companies. Because another thing is that, and this is also proven by some, let's say, empirical literature, by some empirical basis, that SMEs are often driving blind. So let's say that this is to be understood in that way, that the strategic horizon of that companies is rather close. So let's say they are not planning for the next 25 years or something. So their planning horizons are rather limited. And also, when it comes to the use of particular tools and methods, they often don't use it. Again, here the capacity building as provided, for instance, in that project is very helpful to overcome that limits. Another issue is that the R&D, the research and development activity also is rather small in SMEs, especially when we are looking on Central and Eastern Europe, and particular to Eastern Europe. When we are looking to our region, then the industry sector is dominated by what we call extended workbench suppliers. So they are supplier of a supplier for big companies. And this is nothing negative. This is just to say that they don't have pretty much options to steer, or they don't have pretty much options for the design process to influence the design process. But we can discuss on that also a little bit later. So regarding the barriers of in SMEs towards responsible innovation, there's a lack of controversial innovations like advanced biotech or security. There's a lack of links to relevant management issues. So I was very happy to hear that the guys from UK now push that publicly available standards 440 on responsible innovation forward, because this will help to integrate it into already existing management systems like for environmental or quality management. As it is a rather abstract and also theoretical and philosophical topic, there is no direct benefit or return in terms of return of investment in terms of money. So there must be some sort of overarching goal which could be sustainability in order to help that. And regarding the stakeholder interest, there's of course also the question who legitimates the stakes of the interest groups, which confront a lot of companies with their claims. So on some limitations of the study at all, we have a rather low response rates. We faced some difficulties in attracting respondents to take part in this study. And from a methodological point of view, the appropriateness of the interval scale is to be discussed. And in order to make some more deeper analysis, we would have to add some other relevant items such as gender or the existence of certified management systems or innovation activities. But still, our study, when we aim for a description of the sample, provides a couple of interesting insights. So that's from my side. I'm happy if we could discuss a little bit further in the Q&A session. So I stop sharing my screen now, and then I return to the stage.
Markus, for your presentation and these very interesting data. Please stay here on stage because we will go on here now with the Q&A part. Julia and Jonathan will come up on stage and join us again within the next seconds. So please, Julia, come back to stage. Jonathan, join us as well. And we have a look in the chat together. There's already a question from Marcel Bellman, who asks, do you think that the European Green Deal has impact on the topic responsible innovation and research? Who wants to start answering? Okay,
Marcus has raised his hand.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
I guess. Okay. I don't think that the European Green Deal will have an impact on the responsible innovation, but maybe the other way around. Responsible innovation will impact the Green Deal. And this this is actually also the idea of that Green Deal. And I think that companies that decide to apply for grants from that budget, they will be obliged to show what they are doing in favor for the common good or for the goals of the Green Deal in particular, which are pretty much oriented to climate neutrality and circular economy. So more for the ecological side of sustainability.
Okay, very nice perspective. What do the others think?
If I may comment on that, well, it's definitely an opportunity for companies that were already moving towards a responsible innovation approach to see that sustainability is finally at the top tier of our common agenda, because it's the Green Deal, but the concept is a concept of triple bottom line, as it was the Europe 2020 strategy. We've been hearing over and over again that there is no environmental sustainability if there is no social sustainability, for a number of reasons. If nothing else, because if you're dying of hunger, you don't care whether you then throw the plastic bottle, and leave it on the soil for the next generation to keep finding it on the way. So what is behind the Green Deal and was behind Europe 2020 was responsible innovation, as in a way to be smart that keeps together the environmental sustainability and the social sustainability. And then, of course, there will be funds and money earmarked for sustainability, which is also good for enterprises. What is not good for enterprises, and especially SMEs, which need stability, is this constant switch from one jargon to another, from one glossary to another. So am I to go for environmental sustainability, social sustainability, which is then confused with social innovation? Do I have to be green? No, green was yesterday. No, wait, green is back today. Social was yesterday. So, this is very, very confusing. If bringing all these elements together wasn't difficult enough. So I understand that politicians, when they come into service, they want to find their own way to looking at and communicating things, so it looks novel and so clever. But enterprises and SMEs are struggling to keep up with the fads in terms of language of the politician and of the policy instrument. So it's good that it's there, but I understand that companies might be puzzled by this, bubbling of new names to old things, or old names to new things.
Okay, thank you very much. There's another question for Julia from Jessica. She asks, thanks to all of you. My question is for Julia. You mentioned some pilot actions. Could you give us a couple more? Oh, my colleague switched off the chat. I have to check there. To give us a couple more details about them and your feelings about how they went. So the main learning outcomes, main lessons learned from that. It's to Julia.
Thank you for the question. As I said before, there has been quite some diversity throughout the partnership in terms of how this pilot were conceived and run. I can speak, for instance, for start from our experience where we merged design thinking with ethical canvas and RRI road mapping. There's an element a common element to design thinking and responsible innovation, and it is that of opening up the innovation process to reach out beyond the usual suspects. Starting from within the company, you don't talk only to the tech guys, but you also maybe involve your administrative people, the marketing people, of course, those providing technical assistance after sales. So you open up the innovation process to stakeholders, which might be internal and external. And this is something that is vital to responsible innovation as well. But at the same time, design thinking was was better known. At least it was something that has been around for longer than responsible innovation. So we thought that we, starting from there, made more sense to enterprises. So we started from design thinking, which they fancied, they liked, they were interested into, and we show them how when you listen to stakeholders, then you also become accountable in terms of listening to their expectation and needs in terms of sustainability. So this is the kind of exercise that we did. In Poland and also in Lombardy, they took a slightly different approach. They reasoned with each single company in terms to really go deeper into the assessment, the initial assessment that was done with the instrument of the survey, to make them understand what was material to them. This is something that also Jonathan mentioned. It needs to make sense for the specific company. It needs to be material to them, whatever they will be doing in terms of responsible innovation. And then once they found out what responsible innovation could mean for them, they really went to the point of actually defining their own ethical code. In other areas, they a bit more like design thinking style. For instance, in Croatia, they also did some hackathons to really open up the innovation process and to also unfold it in a way that was somehow in ritual. And what we've learned is that companies start from asking you if it pays back, okay? But if you manage to go a bit deeper than that, I'm not saying that it's not important, by the way. I do think that the main responsibility of create profit and create growth and jobs, okay? But then, nowadays is in this new world, it is also important that they do it in a sustainable way. So if you manage to go beyond how much does it cost and how much will it pay back, then you really find out that companies are interested and most of all are able to understand what lies in responsible innovation that can make them better companies, but also better people.
Okay.
Of course, if there's not even an inch of ethical sensitivity, then don't even bother. But you can really build a lot from that if you're able to hold on and jump over the question, how much does it cost? Will it pay back? Which of course it will cost, and of course it will pay back. But if you start from there, there's no game.
Okay. Thank you very much. There's another question from Aneta in the chat. She asks, what sort of opportunities and threats do you see now for implementing the concept of responsible innovation in SMEs? It's a question to Jonathan. Jonathan left the stage, or the connection broke down. I don't know. Can anyone else answer, or does anyone has an idea? Marcus will maybe.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a lot what Julia already said. Definitely. So if the company is able to jump beyond that thinking in terms of costs and benefits regarding that, then it will open up something. And this is also what we experienced in that workshops, but we will see the videos later. So at least from Germany and from Bautzen, where I was involved. And but regarding the let's say the direct opportunities they can use, I have the impression that not every SME was founded for the reason to do something good to the economy or to the society at all. But there are nowadays more and more companies in the field of, let's say, social impact business and also green startups that go that way. But when we look on conventional enterprises, this is maybe not so much the case. But still, we have stakeholder interest and also very, let's say, hard requirements that the companies need to deal with. And RI provides a good and usable toolbox to do that. So, for instance, when you have a look on quality management, then you are obliged to do something like a risk analysis.
Yeah.
And this, of course, relates to questions of product safety at the first hand. But also it relates to things that we have now externalized, like social and environmental impacts. And with the help of the tools, and what I like in the tools is that they are quite simple to understand, and they are quite simple to use, and also for the majority of the tools, it makes some fun also. So you get people engaged, so that's good, and you get them engaged to fulfill external obligations that they have to fulfill anyway. So this is for me the major contribution or the major opportunity. I don't see too much threats in the application of RI tools.
Okay.
Honestly, the threat is or the risk is if you don't look for that tools and applications.
Okay. Yeah, understandable. So Jonathan is back. Maybe he wants to add something. Can you hear us, Jonathan? He wrote in the chat that
I can
he
hear
has problems.
I can hear you. Can you hear me though?
We can hear you. Yes,
okay,
very good. So there was a question addressed to you, which was answered by Marcus Will in the last minutes, but maybe you still want to add something. The question was, what sort of opportunities and threats do you see now for implementing the concept of responsible innovation in SMEs?
I don't know. I think the problem is language. There has to be a different approach in terms of language. If you want to try and get people in that don't understand the background, that haven't got an academic background in ethics or in responsibility and innovation, the approach that you can take European Union definitions or ideas and transfer.
Unfortunately, Jonathan left again. So let's have a look
If
again.
If I may comment on that,
yes, sure.
while it's not online, I totally agree with Jonathan, and this was also something that I mentioned before. I was referring to politicians and their love for new words in whenever they set to prepare their own policy documents. But language is a problem also when you face companies with the literature around responsible innovation, which is very academic. Also, when it's the results of Horizon 2020 project, it's also very academic. Even when there are non-academic partners involved, the deliverables are most of them, not all of them, I must say, but most of them are very difficult to understand. And the language was really did make no sense to enterprises, but at the same time we were using it in order to hope for our projects to get funds. So we were part of the problem, I must say, because in order to make sense for the programs, the EU programs, we kept using the same language, and then we went back home once we got the grant saying, no, this doesn't work at all. But still, it was in application form, it had to be in our deliverables. So we really must be courageous ourselves and get away from all that. The keys, they don't work. We have to translate them for companies. Science education, open access, they don't mean anything to companies, and even less so to SMEs. You have to better develop the concept of openness in a business concept. You have to make companies understand that they may also have a role in scientific education when they decide the training curricula for their employees, but also when they maybe fund courses at the university, when they give some kind of grants to students. So it's not that they don't make sense at all, but in order for them to make sense, the language must change. Yeah. It really must change. Yeah. And even the SDGs, which are so much more, then when you look into the actual wording of the targets, then again you kind of risk losing the companies again, because it's been thought for states rather than from those entities that within states make things happen.
Okay, so it's all about language. Jonathan, Julia finished your answer while you were off.
Yeah, I heard her.
She tried.
I can hear, but I can't speak.
We can hear you. Do you still want to say something to the question?
No, I can hear, but I can't speak.
Okay, so never mind. Let's have another look in the chat. There is no more question at the moment, but maybe participants still have questions. So I would say 2 more questions before we start with the session rooms. Please use the chat and write some question you have to the speakers.
While we wait for questions, I would like to say something on the survey.
Yes.
Lack of scientific design behind the survey. But, to be honest with you guys, the thing is that we were thinking of using that questionnaire to, to force some thinking into the process with us. And then we had sort of an epiphany, but we're actually collecting data that could be good for some kind of analysis. So the work that Marcus had to do was a very, very tough and challenging one, to get some scientific reasoning out of something that was designed for something else. So kudos to Marcus, because he has gifted us with something that was really unexpected, started from raw material, which was not up for the job.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah,
So
I believe.
well, that's true. But I have to give the kudos further to Vera, who was 1 year ago my assistant in that project, and she did all the dirty job with the
Okay, so
handling of the analysis.
thank you to Vera. Okay, good. So there seem to be no more questions. There's nothing more in the chat. So let's go to the sessions now. I thank you very much for that Q&A session. Unfortunately, Jonathan couldn't speak so much, but thank you very much. And you can leave now if you want. I will go on with the sessions in the ROSIE breakout rooms. And I have to give some advice to this. We have planned 7 session rooms according to the language of the local partners. So there are 7 rooms with 7 different languages. And contrary to our first idea of establishing one more room for all participants in English, we have decided against such a room. So don't worry, there's just 7 national language rooms. Please choose your session room according to your preferred language. And if you enter the room, that's one more advice, you will only be watching what happens in there. You can use the chat to interact with the session leader. You can write questions in the chat and so on, but you cannot speak yourself. If you want to join the discussion live, and if you want to speak, you need to click share audio and video so that the session leader can let you up on stage. That's one more important advice to this. So go to your session room now and have a good time until 12:25. We want to go on here on stage on 12:25. Be back at this time and have a good time. Bye-bye. Welcome back here at the stage area. I hope you had some good talks and interactive exchange in the session rooms. We will go on here now in the plenary meeting with a final presentation for wrapping up the ROSIE project. First, we will show you another video from Miklos Lukovic and Nicoleta Nadas from the first Hungarian Responsible Innovation Association, and then we will listen to their wrapping up presentation live on stage.
Dear ladies and gentlemen,
hello everyone, my name is Bonnie. Yes, I'm a talking dog. Why are you surprised? Modern technology can have wonderful results, but the results of ROSIE project is even more outstanding. Let my humans talk about it.
It was a great pleasure for us to be part of the ROSIE project. Our organization, the first Hungarian Responsible Innovation Association, participated in several projects, and we also conducted several pilot studies. However, most of these pilot studies happened in the academic sector. The ROSIE project gave us the opportunity to find a bridge to get closer to the business sector and to get some information about how to implement the concept of responsible innovation among the business sector and among SMEs. Also, it was a great opportunity for us to spread the word about responsible innovation and the STIR method, which is the abbreviation of Socio-Technical Integration Research. Its aim is to strengthen the cooperation between social and natural scientists. Also, it was a great pleasure for us that Eric Fischer, our external expert and the developer of this STIR methodology, was also involved in the ROSIE project, and he had a training about the STIR method and teach the participants how to use it. In the ROSIE project, Our main task was to help AI consultants how to implement the concept of responsible innovation and how to use the STIR method among SMEs. For this purpose, we regularly had Skype help desks. Also, the capacity building trainings were quite interesting for us as we could get to know some other methods that can be used for the implementation of responsible innovation.
In the ROSIE project, we tried out brand new perspectives of responsible innovation in terms of awareness raising. To the national targeted event, we invited experts and also very important person from the celeb world in order to confirm that responsible innovation is a very important issue in the world and in our private life.
We are very happy because we had more than 200 guests at the event in Celeb.
It was a great pleasure for us to be part of the ROSIE project. Our main field of study is to implement the concept of responsible innovation in the post-socialist innovation environment. For this purpose, the ROSIE project was a great opportunity for us to gain further experience and further empirical results how to increase the responsible innovation awareness among researchers. We can use the results of the ROSIE project for our scientific and practical work. The main aim of our organization is to help SMEs to be more responsible innovators. We will continue our mission after the ROSIE projects too.
ROSIE is the best project in the world.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta and Miklos, for that video presentation. Now, please come on stage for your live presentation. We'll wait a moment for Nicoletta and Miklos. They will be with us in a second. It's just 15 seconds delay in the tool until people come on stage if they have requested access. So they will be with us in a second. It's just 15 seconds delay. I can't see her, but in the tool until welcome, Nicoletta. Hello. They have requested. Hi. Hello. How are you?
Hello. Welcome, everyone.
Very good. We can hear you. Sounds very good. Now we're still waiting for Miklos. Okay. Welcome, Nicoletta. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Hello. How are you?
I'm fine. Can you hear me?
Very good. We can hear you. Very good. Now we're still waiting for Nicoletta, do you start your presentation?
Unfortunately, Miklos cannot be here with us.
Starts. Okay.
So I will talk about this topic.
Okay. So we just have to wait for a moment still. So he's not there. In between, maybe you can give us feedback to the event also. There's a poll started on the right-hand side where you have the chat. There's a second rider with a poll. You can say how you liked the event. Maybe that's something I can say in between. Now, where is Miklos?
The right-hand side where you have the chat, there's a second rider with a
Okay, so can you hear me? Because I have problems. I cannot hear you.
We can hear you very well. That's fine. We're just not having contact to Miklos at the moment. He's not backstage.
Miklos couldn't come, so I will be the only presenter.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I leave the stage and you can start, okay?
Okay, so I share my screen. Okay. So it's not an option. Sorry for... Okay, so can you hear me and do you see my presentation? So let's start. As I mentioned, unfortunately, Miklos couldn't join us, so I will be the only presenter. The main aim of this presentation is to put the ROSIE project into a global context. When we talk about responsible innovation, our main aim is to strengthen the positive impacts regarding research, development, and innovation processes and outcomes, and also to minimize the possible, in most cases, unintended negative impacts that can have serious effects on the economy, society, and also on the environment. We started to deal with responsible innovation in 2015 when the question turned up how to turn the theory into practice. We found that STIR could be a great method for the implementation of responsible innovation. Thus, our colleague Miklos Lukovic spent 3 months in the United States of America at the Arizona State University, and Eric Fisher, the developer of the STIR method, trained here. Then it turned out that the STIR method had only been tested in developed countries in that time. So the question turned up, what happens if we try to introduce the STIR method in a less developed innovation environment, in our cases in a post-socialist innovation environment? So when Miklos came back to Hungary, in Szeged 2 pilots was conducted. You can see here some pictures about it. And the results showed that the STIR method can work in less developed countries too, but we realized that it cannot be as effective as in the developed countries. We found that the innovation environment can significantly influence the success of the implementation of responsible innovation with the STIR method. So we found that in order to apply successfully the STIR method in less developed countries, we need to fulfill methodology development or methodological refinement in order to tailor the method for the special features of the post-socialist innovation environment or less developed innovation environment. If you are interested in this topic and about the results of Hungarian pilot studies, I recommend you to read this scientific paper, and you could get more knowledge or more information about the Hungarian pilots. It's also a really important finding regarding responsible innovation and the introduction and implementation of responsible innovation, that underfinanced laboratories and also companies will not choose the responsible innovation model until they have to struggle for daily survival, and also until the basic needs that can be found on the bottom of these hierarchy needs of Maslow are not satisfied. So, in order to turn the theory into practice in the post-socialist innovation environment and the less developed countries, we found that methodology developments are needed. And thus, we started some pilots how to improve these methods. The main aim for the future, of course, to turn the theory into practice. However, as you could see, many aspects can influence the success of the practical implementation of responsible innovation. You can see here a process of methodology development that we conducted in the last few years, and of course we will continue it in the future. The basics of these improvements is the original STIR method. You can see here that ROSIE project is also part of this process, and the reason behind it is that, according to Eric Fisher, STIR is any process during a natural scientist or a scientist or researcher taking into consideration some social aspects, and also they regard as these aspects as the integral part of their work. So ROSIE is not about STIR methods, of course, because we use several methods and a great variety of methods, but if we implement STIR in a way as Eric Fisher mentioned it, then it can be also a kind of STIR. So it's also part of this process. First, we conducted the STIR Junior pilot when we tested how the STIR method can be used among young researchers or researchers in the making. Because of the special characteristics of these young generations, we modified the STIR method in some points. Also, the special features of Hungary was taken into consideration. So besides the social, environmental, and ethical aspects, we discussed with young researchers the economic aspects and also the post-socialist attitudes. As the target group was young researchers, mainly university students, due to the lack of laboratory environment, we used focus group discussions during this STIR Junior. Also, due to the lack of research topic, we use concrete historical examples, for example, the Pokemon Go, or we use the smartphones as examples and the nuclear chain reaction, which we all know that these innovations had unintended negative side effects in the past. Also, in order to measure the direction and the extent of the change during the process, we changed the interviews to questionnaires, and also we used the scaled question from 1 to 6 scales. If you are interested in the results, you can read our scientific paper about it. The next step was the STIR project. During STIR project, testbeds in 8 post-socialist countries were set up in order to adapt the STIR method to the special features of the post-socialist innovation environment. The adapted approach was tested in 4 academic and 7 business research organizations. So this was the very first time when the STIR method was tested in the business sector in less developed countries. The main problem that we had to struggle with was the lack of motivation. We also experienced it in the ROSIE project. So in this we prepared some motivational material and we renamed the STIR method to Innovation Process Management Advisory Services, as we thought that it could be more attractive for business sector. We also took into consideration the special features of the innovation environment, so we created 3 groups to investigate. The first one was the old EU member states, and the second is the new EU member states, and the third group is the non-EU member states. We also tried to involve the possible widest range of actors, so we involved both academic and business sector participants too. In order to compare the results, Eric Fisher had a training for the so-called embedded humanists, and also they had to take an exam before starting the pilot actions. And just like in STIR Junior, we scaled the questions in this STIR too. After this STIR, we draw up some recommendations that can be also integrated in ROSIE projects. The first one, and maybe one of the most important, is that the motivational issues is a crucial thing. We have to find a way how to motivate participants to be part of these projects and to implement the concept of responsible innovation in a way. Also, it's important to test the durability of the results after 1 or 2 years. And what is even more important, we found that STIR method is a little bit complicated. So what is needed is a more flexible method that we can implement among business sector participants. And the next step was in this methodology development, the ROSIE project. As you know, this was so the main target group of ROSIE project is the business sector, especially SMEs. And we experienced that before ROSIE project, this group was quite underrepresented in the implementation of responsible innovation. During ROSIE, RI consultants used a great variety of methods regarding the online trainings that were available for everyone. I guess that we managed to make it even simpler for SMEs to adapt or to implement the concept of responsible innovation. However, when we talk about the in-depth trainings, of course, it became a simple and easy to understand concept, but we still believe that it is still not as flexible as the target group requires it. The next step was for us the in-class training. We firmly believe that we managed to find a simple and flexible method. We invited some professionals, most of them were economists, and the target group of these in-class trainings was young generations. So regarding the special features of these generations, we used interactive discussions or, let's say, teaching methods with practice-oriented trainings in order to ensure the knowledge that can be used in their daily work. So the main aim of this methodology development was to find a simple and flexible method to implement the concept of responsible innovation to the possible widest range of researchers and businesses. Of course, we know that we have a lot of things to do, and the next step may be the solution for this is the generalization of responsible innovation and STIR. If you take a look at this table, in the last row, you can see that the number of total trained researchers is really low. Recently, we asked Eric Fisher how many researchers are trained in the last 10 years, and the number is 104. So again, in the last 10 years, 104 researchers were trained. So it's a relatively an extremely low number. So the speed of spreading responsible innovation in practice is extremely slow. The question is how to make this process faster, and how can we generalize the responsible innovation. Our idea for that is based on economic issues. Miklos Lukovic and some others wrote a paper that can be read in the International Handbook of Responsible Innovation. In this paper, they investigated the economic background of responsible innovation among business participants and in the business sector. The conclusion of this paper is that responsible innovation can be interpreted as an externality. Externality in economics means that it's an additional cost that can emerge for the company or for the society. Usually these externalities and these additional costs are not intended, but they are strongly in connection with innovations. So we try to analyze responsible innovation in an economic way, and we found that the main problem with responsible innovation in economics is that the main goal of innovators, namely maximizing the profit, and also the main goal of society to maximize the quality of life, usually runs counter. So, under these circumstances, a rational innovator will not choose responsible innovation model, because what is more important for them is profit and not the quality of life of the society. So in many cases, innovators are not motivated to create socially desirable products or services if they cannot profit from that. So applying responsible innovation in the business innovation under these circumstances goes against profit criteria, but they can change their mind if someone is willing to pay these additional costs that are attached to innovations. And this is how it works. So innovative companies are willing to use the aspects of responsible innovation and willing to involve responsible innovation criteria if the customer is willing to pay more for their innovation output. And on the other hand, customers are willing to pay more if they get responsible products and services. But the problem is that how can customers recognize what is safe product, what is a responsible product? The answer is the signaling theory, which means that the company should make it visible for customers that they are responsible innovators. And this is the basics of our new paper that we are working on. And in this new paper, we talk about an alternative approach to the widespread application of responsible innovation in practice. In this paper, we try to find a way, an alternative way, which can be a responsible innovation certificate, which is similar to a quality certification, this ISO certifications. And we firmly believe that if 4 conditions meet, then this responsible innovation certificate can work effectively. The first condition is that information asymmetries must be eliminated. As I mentioned, companies should make it visible for customers that they are responsible innovators. The second condition is that it must be a standard type, which means in our interpretation that a third party should ensure and approve that we are conducting our researches and innovation processes according to the principles of responsible innovation. And also, in economic point of view, the responsible innovation should be the rational choice of both the innovators and the customers. So innovators should invest more money and time to be to be a responsible innovator, and also customers have to pay more for responsible products. Also, we can show you nice pictures and figures about it. Of course, it's interesting for an economist, but for others, I don't think so. So if you are interested in our alternative approach and about this responsible innovation certification, then please read our scientific paper that will be published soon. So we firmly believe that the generalization of the concept of responsible innovation could be the solution how to reach the possible widest range of innovators and researchers. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta, for your video presentation and your live presentation. That was very impressive. Now, please come on stage, Julia, because at the end of a 3-year project, the final word has the lead partner of Interact Central Europe, and Julia has the last word now.
Yeah, I would like to, of course, thank all our speakers today and our host, TGZ, which was faced with the task of transforming what would have been a live event into a virtual event. And I'm also looking at the polls, and it looks as they succeeded big time. And I would like to thank all the people that have been with us today to listen to what Rosie set out to do and what it actually achieved. Just to give a look at what will remain from Rosie. Besides the roadmaps that I already mentioned and that they will deliver their effect as they are implemented, I would like once again to remind you to check our website on Interreg Central Europe program, but also to keep an eye on our toolbox, which is online at www.responsibleinnovationworkbox.eu. I'm not taking any more of your time to wrap up what Rosie was, because I think this has been fully explained. We committed to responsible innovation. We committed to openness, and I think that was quite clearly showed also by the fact that we left our final remarks to the illustration of another project. And this said, I really would like to thank partners for 3 years of intense work, a lot of bumps in the road. We overcame them. We made it. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. It stays up to me to thank you all for attending this virtual event. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your interest. I say goodbye to all participants and all session leaders and speakers. I will invite to come to the photo session room now for taking a picture still. So see you there, and bye-bye.